Inherent in fiction is the idea of immersion. The creator wants to make the audience believe that they're truly part of the story. Video games are no different in this regard. Possibly the crowning glory in this idea of immersion in video games is the concept of virtual reality, where one can directly control the game and receive realistic feedback to the senses. So far, there has been little success in private virtual reality. See the Virtual Boy for an example of a failure. However, the idea of virtual reality remains an interesting one that has been often explored in other media, including a good number of books that I myself have read. Our book today is an example of this exploration of virtual reality, Deadly Pink by Vivian Vande Velde. Grace Pizzelli is your average teenage girl. Her older sister, Emily, is a little more than average. A college student, Emily is interning for the Rasmussen Corporation, most well known in this universe for creating virtual reality games that connect one to the game via electrodes. One day, Grace finds herself taken to the Rasmussen facility where her sister has been employed, and learns that Emily has plugged herself into a game and hacked it in such a way as to both make the game much easier and make it impossible for her to be taken out against her will. The tension comes from the amount of time in the game. Normal sessions are around a half an hour, but there's a fear of death after some 10 hours. The exact cause of death is never specified, but I would have to guess some type of seizure. Grace is forced to enter the game, find her sister, and convince her not to commit virtual suicide. That happens about halfway through the book, then the entire plot decides to go off on a tangent. After convincing Emily not to commit suicide, Grace and her sister find themselves unable to leave the game. They learn from an AI that the game is pissed at Emily for cheating her way through the game, and they cannot leave until they have paid back every gold coin Emily has earned by cheating. So it went from a rather heartfelt story of sisterhood and the struggles of growing up to an Aesop about cheating. The game that Emily has hidden herself away in is not, as one might expect, some action fantasy game like an MMORPG. Instead, it's a game aimed at 6-year-olds. Frilly dresses, fairies, carnivals, butterflies, the works. When first reading the book, I felt as though the setting had been wasted. Why make a virtual reality situation when it's just some stupid little girl's game? It took a line from Grace to make me realize the symbolism behind the setting. While confronting her sister, Grace describes the game as being so girly and pink. Pink takes on its own connotation within the book. It is shiny and pretty, true, but the negative meaning comes through. Emily is just trying to avoid the pain of the real world by hiding away in a fantasy world. In addition, there comes the idea that Emily feels that she can't handle the adult world and just wants to be a little girl again. There was a lot of thought that went into the setting and how it would fit into Emily's character, and I applaud the author for this. Despite the depth of the symbolism, the plot does suffer. As I said, the story goes completely off course halfway into the book. As Emily explained her reasons for wanting to commit suicide, I found myself thinking that the book must almost be over, only to realize that there was over 100 pages left. Now, the way that the book emphasizes the consequences of actions isn't necessarily bad. Emily has to repay the coins she got by cheating, and by the end of the book she has to pay the consequences for her other actions. I would go into further detail, but that would require far more spoilers than I care to discuss. Again, this shows intelligence on the part of the author, and works the pink theme back into it. In the fantasy land you can do whatever you like, but in the real world there are consequences. However, the way it is done feels incredibly awkward, not helped at all by the fact that Emily's character development stops dead at the midpoint. Speaking of Emily, seriously, she's not even the main protagonist, and yet I'm much more interested in her than Grace. She's a really great character in the first half. She is a complex character, acting cold at some points, angry at others, and on the verge of tears later on. She's a scared teenage girl trying to figure out how the world works. I feel like I can identify with her much more than with Grace, who is as bland as can be and is the first-person narrator. And then, after Grace finally decides that she doesn't want to die, she stops being interesting and spends most of her time bitching at Grace. Okay, admittedly, at this time she's kind of dying, but that's no excuse. Characters who are unironically annoying piss me off because there's no point to their acting like that aside from making the audience hate them. And good God, do I hate Emily in the second half of the book. As for Grace, the only word I can use to describe her is sarcastic. And that's it. That is the only constant personality trait. The deadpan snarker archetype can work, sure, but only in comedy. In drama, one needs more personality than just being sarcastic to carry the plot and allow the reader to identify with the character. As it is, Grace is just boring and one-dimensional. So, Deadly Pink. The first half is really pretty good, and probably could have been published on its own as a novella, or perhaps expanded upon to make a full novel by itself. The second half diverts the plot completely, making the only interesting character a whiny little priss, and trying in vain to give the main protagonist a personality beyond snarky. With the flaws, however, comes a strong writing ability honed by years of experience, and a thought-provoking dualism between reality and fantasy. If you don't have anything else to read, go ahead and check this out, as it isn't too long. However, the flaws are too numerous for me to recommend it otherwise, so I'll give Vivian Vande Velde's Deadly Pink a score of 4 out of 10 stars. Deadly Pink is available from your local bookseller. There are also 2 other books set in the same universe as Deadly Pink, also dealing with virtual reality, but with unrelated characters. User Unfriendly, published in 1991, and Heir Apparent, published in 2002, neither of which I have read and cannot attest to their quality, unhelped by the fact that they're aimed at a younger audience than Deadly Pink. Thanks for listening. This is Jen Silver signing off.